Hello. Now it's time for something completely different to the last talk. Another experiment. This time I'm going to talk about a few specific issues and questions that have come up for me that is very important in my own reflection. The main question is, how do you know you're making the world a better place? This is a question that guides a lot of my life these days. Other versions of this question or similar questions. What is most important? Am I doing the right thing? And what sort of brought on this question in particular, for me, was listening to Soryu Foral. He's the founder of the Monastic Academy for the Preservation of Life on Earth. So I'm spending a lot of time in an ecosystem very similar to that one, a monastery under development. And through my time here, I've heard a few talks, and one of them had Soryu addressing something that I'll roughly paraphrase now, which is that if I continue to trust exactly the thing that is destroying life on Earth, then I have maximized the likelihood that I'm destroying life on Earth. So I should probably examine the ways in which I'm destroying life on Earth, given this idea that I might be continuing to, or at least that I'm capable of continuing to trust exactly the thing that is destroying life on Earth. For what that thing may be, for a potential suggestion for what that may be, I'd encourage everyone to check out Soryu's talk. I believe it's called Can Meditation Save the World? I don't think I'll put any links to it below for now. Maybe that'll change. We'll see. So with those as context pieces, I'll now just sort of talk around the question of how do you know you're making the world a better place? Quite a few years ago, about 4 or so years ago, from when I'm shooting this video, I finished my undergraduate degree in philosophy, and I studied ethics. I studied what I thought was important, the study of what is valuable, what is important, what is good, what is moral, as well as a bit of meta-ethics, the questions of what do all those terms mean? What do they mean in different contexts? What are the systems by which we can create structure around these terms? And through that study, as well as the study of psychology, personality, and positive psychology and well-being, I got an idea of what I thought was important. But I didn't really. I was horrifically confused about what to do with my life. I applied to a program to study higher education because that seemed like a good idea. At the time, I loved learning. I loved being at school. I liked higher education, so why not study higher education itself, particularly with an angle on student services and how to bring more of what I thought was good, more ethics and well-being psychology to student services programs and higher education strategy. I didn't get into the stream of the program that I wanted to, and that allowed me to really sink in a bit to how confused I was about life and about what I wanted to do with my life. Frankly, about what was most important. I was always unsure what was most important, but this was a moment where I sort of had to admit that. I had to admit that I wasn't confident, that I had good principles to make decisions on. And this uncertainty led to a few things. One of them, this uncertainty gave me some time and breathing room and space to think about my life and what I wanted it to be. This uncertainty in this moment sort of gave me a bit of like a jolt and a break from the previous year, which was one of the darker years of my life, just because I chose to cut off a lot of ties and simplify my life in a lot of ways that were not healthy. So this gave me at least this felt like doing something, asking these questions: what is most important? How can I work on something that's meaningful to me? And that's when I discovered what I've been into for many years. It's something called effective altruism. So this network, this movement, this set of ideas and principles, this serves as both an intellectual project and a practical project for asking the question, how can we do the most good with the resources we have? As well as breathing our best answers into reality, really testing things out. That's what it means to me. And I've basically been digging through effective altruism for quite a few years and learning and really benefiting from that. My career is now an effective altruism career to some degree. I've gotten some funding to do effective altruism community building, and I think it's gone pretty well so far. I think so. And that has been my answer. I've been trying to seek, but also trying to act and live out my answer of how can I do the most good, what is most important, what is most meaningful. And over the last few months, things have been changing a little bit. I've been more open to reconsideration of all I thought was most important, of all my answers to these questions. I wanted to re-examine them. And what this has led to is more questions. Which is why I started this video with the question that's now very alive for me, which I feel deeply is a very hard question to ask and a hard question to hold. I feel a lot of sadness and weight in just sort of really asking this question for myself. I'll say the question again. How do you know you're making the world a better place? I think that a lot of people who are doing good, who are intending to do good, who are doing good, are driven by not always a transparent and clear set of motivations. What I mean is that I think a lot of people who are trying to do good are potentially driven by something more inside themselves as opposed to outside themselves, something more ego than ethics, potentially. And for me, I think I was very uncertain and delusional to a degree, and I definitely still am, about why I was doing the specific things I'm doing, like why I cared about effective altruism and utilitarianism and those systems of doing good much, much more than growing a sustainable community. I mean, the numbers matter. If I can put some big numbers down on some paper or something, and those numbers mean something, then hopefully that'll be good. It might even be like more good, like thousands of times more good than just creating a little eco village and just hanging out, just chilling out with maybe some friends, get some friends to join, some families. Yeah. So I'm investigating these questions now. I guess for a lot of people who've been doing good in certain ways for a while, it may seem obvious that, oh, of course I'm doing good. What do you mean? How do you know you're making the world a better place? Like, look, I've got these numbers written down on a sheet of paper. You know, I've donated this much money. It saved this much lives. How do I know it saved this much lives? The organization told me it saved this much lives. And I read the organization's spreadsheet, and these people are all very well intentioned. These people, all along the line, all down the line, are trustworthy to a pretty high degree in that they really want to do the most good. They don't want to fool themselves. They want to save lives. And what does it mean to save a life? Well, they usually mean something like there's a high chance, like a 90% chance, at least maybe, that they've averted the equivalent across many people, that they've averted the equivalent amount of suffering or premature death time of people. So, for instance, they've averted the death of a child's life. They know that a certain amount of children die of malaria in a certain area, and you can deploy an intervention and basically get those numbers. How many children died when we deployed the intervention? Can we control this? Can we look at other places, other parts of the same the village or city or whatever it is? Can we really be sure that our intervention was the thing that changed these lives? And further than that, can we be pretty damn sure that there aren't any effects that sort of spread out, that sort of flow through and lead to negative things? Are we seeing any, strange economic activity or moral communal behavior? Who knows? So that's one way to think that you're, doing good, and I think that's a damn good way. I applaud people who use this way of figuring out whether or not they're doing good. That, of course, is about a very specific action, though. It's about donating, or it's about a very specific career someone might have where they're using the data to save someone's life. And there are other stories we have about how to do good and save lives. For instance, maybe we see a problem like nuclear security, the fact that there are nuclear weapons that could be deployed, as they have been deployed, to cause horrific, basically unimaginable suffering. And there are people today working to lower the chances of that. That's another way. They've got their own set of things to look at, their own set of perhaps numbers and relations, a lot of political, social factors going into that. So I'm talking about nuclear security, I've talked about global poverty a bit, other ways to do lots and lots of good, climate change, preventing that somehow, biorisk, preventing that somehow, technologies from becoming destructive and harmful to humans and other beings, other living beings in the world. These are routes to do good, and when one focuses in on them, I imagine that a lot of good could potentially be done. But I think I want to flip the path I'm going on now. I want to flip this and talk about another way to think about doing good, which is just every action you take. And this sounds very extreme, but what would happen if every action you take, you ask the question, how do you know you're making the world a better place? You ask that to yourself. So, for instance, I get up in the morning, I go for a jog, I go sip some coffee, So I've bought those clothes that I'm wearing. I've bought those coffee beans somewhere. I'm living in a house. Basically, like, okay, all this stuff is here. It's for me. I've acquired it, purchased it, inherited, or whatnot. Do I know where all these things come from? All these things I interact with on a daily basis that are mine, that are my responsibility. Do I know the flow through? Do I know the wide-ranging systemic effects that those have on the world? Do I calculate those in the same way that I want to calculate, the good I do through my career donations or whatnot? Of course, just talking about calculating any of this stuff, it's pretty wild. It's pretty niche. Though I think it brings up a good point that even people who are extremely well-intentioned, committed to helping others, and also very rational, very analytical, very scientifically minded, very capable in terms of the technology and tools they can use to do good. With all these things, there's a rigor to really understanding, and there's a rigor to really answering the question of how do you know you're making the world a better place. And carrying that rigor with you at every moment of the day just seems somewhere between overly demanding and unthinkable or impossible. Yet, I hope it isn't, because of the fact that our actions do have wide-ranging, flow-through, systematic consequences. The purchases we make, the ways we treat others, these things really do echo out, and it can become very noisy, very complex, and even chaotic and noisy to track these things. And often, unless one has an extremely simple life, it's basically impossible to get any sort of grasp on these things. And even with an incredibly simple life, even living in the woods, maybe you'll step on some grass and kill some insects or whatnot. That was very, very hard to quantify the damage you've just done to life and the universe, if that's part of your moral system, to care about insects, and I hope it is. At least there's some possibility that all life has some value, because maybe those insects are going to flower some plants that one day some other insects would eat, and you deprive those insects of some good, some flourishing, insect flourishing. Either way, that's all, again, super niche tangent. So I'll bring it back. Among many ways to think about how we're doing good in the world, I think just letting go of the care we have, letting go of the ability to sense into the effects of our actions, is a move towards a world with more dissatisfaction and suffering. So in this lacking Dharma Talk, I think the message that I want to drive home for myself is to continue to not just put a few numbers on the sheet, not just put a few ideas on my mind when it comes to trying to do good, trying to make the world a better place for all beings, for all life, for humans, for grass. Probably not grass as much as humans, of course. There's differences between grass and humans, and I mainly care about the humans. But either way, I want to consider these strange ways of thinking, because I really hope one day to do as much good as can be done, to live an ethical life. Now, I don't ask questions and challenge myself in these regards. If I don't really hold these hard questions, I don't think I'll be able to do good on net.